the reason it's happening actually is the cumulative effect of talking. You don't get to a solution just by talking once. In Northern Ireland, we're talking for decades with the IRA. It actually takes a long time. Each failure is a false summit that then leads you on, hopefully, to a greater success. And that's been true, I think, of ESSA. What's happened with ESSA is the security impact, particularly under the Qaeda, the Spanish Interior Ministry, which has been very effective with French collaboration over the last couple of years, plus the political way out that is offered to Pakistan and ESSA. So I think that actually shows the opposite. It shows you can, by talking over time, plus security policy, get to a solution. Of course, you can handle the talking badly, as Mitchell points out in his book. The Willie Whitehall talks with the young Adams and Guinness and other IRA leaders in Cheney Walk was clearly a disaster. They hadn't thought through how to manage it. And there are unintended consequences you can find by approaching terrorists and trying to engage with them. You can give them legitimacy when you don't want to. You can encourage other people to use armed force to get their ends. And you can give the terrorists altogether the wrong sense of things. I sat down with one terrorist group who told me they were going to pile bodies on the table before they reappear in negotiation. You do not want to give terrorists those kind of incentives. But that's about how you handle the talks, rather than actually talking yourself. Mitchell distinguishes between what he calls the reconcilable and the unreconcilable. And he says you shouldn't deal with the unreconcilable, you should only deal with the reconcilable. This is an argument much favoured in Afghanistan at the moment. But I'd like to know how you know who the reconcilable are and who the unreconcilable are. It's very hard to distinguish between them. People shift over time. Think about Northern Ireland. Jerry Adams was certainly being considered unreconcilable in the 70s and early 80s. He became reconcilable over time. Not a terrorist at all. A politician like Ian Paisley, he was certainly unreconcilable in the 70s and 80s, but by the end of the peace process came to be irreconcilable. So you can't know who is irreconcilable and who isn't. It's also possible in these circumstances to overestimate intelligence. Mitchell suggests that secret intelligence can help you know what the intention of terrorist groups are. It doesn't help, actually. Intelligence is very good at helping you frustrate individual attacks. It can tell you when they're going to happen, tell you how to stop them. What it doesn't tell you is what is in the hearts of these people. It's extremely misleading. What they'll be saying to their targets, to their volunteers, is something very different from they themselves can think. And many groups have different divisions in them, just like governments. Terrorist groups are divided into hardliners and moderates, and you can't be sure what their position is. So I think it's impossible to distinguish between reconcilables and unreconcilables, and you have to be prepared to talk. Next argument against is hearts and minds. Colonel O'Connor, in his excellent books and produces this, has argued that what you need to do is separate the people from terrorist groups, find ways of winning them over by the policies that you adopt. It's clearly right. In Northern Ireland, what happened was the British government tried to institute policies that were fair on housing and employment, which had not existed before. The grievances that gave rise to the civil rights movement and to support for the IRA campaign. That helped. It was necessary, but it was not sufficient. Just getting the hearts and minds will not solve the problem for you. You will find there's still agreement on how to address politically by dialogue. So it helps, but it's not the answer in itself. The other argument that is advanced against it is that you should have preconditions. You should not engage in talks until you actually met a precondition. Again, I think that's a terrible mistake. In Northern Ireland, I haven't got time to go into that now, but in Northern Ireland, the decommissioning turned into an absolute burden for us in the talks. Something we spent a long time trying to get through or get round with the various that were making on that. It's equally a mistake, I think, to set either preconditions for Hamas that will happen to them. They should be part of the negotiation themselves. Or for Israel, in settlements. Leaving aside the right or wrong issue, you set up either of those things as a precondition for making it harder to get into the talks. Mitchell argues you should negotiate from strength. Again, very popular in Afghanistan. First we should deal with the Taliban and other ways, then we should negotiate with them. I think it's right that you have to be clear that the terrorists group do not win by military means. They need to understand that there's not victory within their grasp if they just keep on. I'm a bit sceptical about the notion you get up the hand and then negotiate. It's what terrorists sometimes think. If they just have another outrage, another few bombs, then the government will negotiate. It's actually a delusion in terms of when you do. Lastly, in this section, timing. Mitchell argues that sometimes you're right to talk, sometimes you're not right to talk. In my view, peace is a process, not an event. You don't suddenly have a peace. It's something that you work out over a long period of time. It's about trying to build trust. And General Petraeus again says in Iraq, the US authorities, US military, were too late in talking to those with blood on their hands. Mitchell has a very interesting chapter about the negotiations with the Anwar awakening and the various groups there. But I do think myself that you should start as early as you can, because it takes a very long time to have this sort of dialogue. Now, of course, there is a cycle of luck that sometimes you have to go through. People have to prove that they can't do things militarily, and you have to wait for that before you have success. But again, I wouldn't think that's an argument against talking. It's about how you go about it. So I don't think it's ever right to refuse to talk to terrorists or anyone else. Talking is not a reward for good behaviour. It is something we do for our own purposes. But I would distinguish, and I think this is where Mitch and I actually agree, between talking and negotiating. There's a difference between setting up a channel and then using it to negotiate for peace. Michael Oakley, the SIS agent who is quoted in Mitchell's book, who opened up the link with the IRA in 1974, called it a bamboo pipe. He set it up as a way of communicating. You could blow down, people around could hear, or they could blow down and you could hear. We didn't actually use it initially for negotiation. It's a way of communicating with people. I think that distinction is important. In my view, negotiation with terrorists should only happen when both sides are clear that they cannot win militarily. In Northern Ireland, the IRA tried everything, the long campaign, the short, sharp shot, the lane hand campaign. By the mid-80s, when Adams and Guinness were reaching beyond fighting age, they were getting sort of middle-aged for terrorists, if you see what I mean. They decided that actually the thing to do was to try and find a peaceful solution. They realised they couldn't be defeated by the military, but they were not going to succeed in that end militarily. The British Army had reached the same conclusion by about the same sort of time. That was the time when it was ready to talk, because both sides could see the military option led nowhere. One of the problems in Sri Lanka during the ceasefire was the new government of Rajapaksa thought that it could win militarily, and it managed to, and the Public Khan thought that Tamil Tigers could win militarily. The ceasefire collapsed because both sides didn't have that previous acceptance that it was possible to do. And in my view, you can't have public talks to deal with democratic government until you've got a ceasefire and something like the Mitchell principles of non-violence. So Mitchell might accept all of these arguments that I put forward and said, okay, we should talk to the Taliban, we might talk to Hamas, but we shouldn't talk to Al-Qaeda. So let me just, in conclusion and briefly, address why Al-Qaeda, even Al-Qaeda, falls into this category. Now, of course, Al-Qaeda are different from the other terrorist groups I've been talking about. They're global rather than national. They're a network rather than an organisation, more an idea than Al-Qaeda. And they're vicious. They'll kill as many people as they conceivably can and do the most awful things. On the other hand, I don't really believe there are such things as good terrorists, like Ma'am as evil as Al-Qaeda were, even if not successful at killing as many people. And so with the IRA. So I don't think I don't really think by saying Al-Qaeda is different, you're actually making any sort of argument against talking to them. It's simply describing a fact. More convincing argument would be is that they don't have a realistic political agenda. They're not asking for anything that we can actually deliver. Now, one demand that was achievable was removing US troops from Saudi Arabia. And US troops have left Saudi Arabia long since, so that's gone. And they want a caliphate, which is not considered by anyone to be realistic. But that's my point about talking. You have to try and persuade people to move to a realistic political position. The IRA, as much as for the Taliban, it's very easy to shelter behind the position of troops out. Against the Taliban, foreign forces out. Against the IRA, Brits out. That's an easy position to take. But when they have to try and think about things they actually want positively, rather than things they want negatively, it becomes very difficult indeed. And the point is to have an educated process that helps them to reach that. Many of these people live in ghettos. All they do is talk to each other. They have no real sense of what the outside world thinks of a wider dialogue. Usually, the person who becomes leader of the terrorist movement is the extremist, the person who takes the hardest line. So I think that we need to have, even the concept of negotiation is often foreign to these people. It takes quite a long time to engage them to persuade them to get realistic. The next issue with Al-Qaeda is how to make contact. You wouldn't be able to march up to Libya to a London rather than simply engaging in conversation. That's not likely to be successful. The answer probably is to start nationally. There are Al-Qaeda offshoots in a number of nations, in Mali and Niger, for example, where people engage with them to negotiate the release of hostages, particularly the French. Al-Shabaab in Somalia. There are groups that are quite close to the centre of Al-Qaeda. They have clear Elysium grants of engagement in Indonesia and the Philippines. The cohesion of the group is crucial when you have a group that actually sticks together. In the case of the IRA, we didn't want them to split yet again. We wanted to stay together and hope to achieve this once instead of many times.